Welcome to the Core Women Podcast, the place for women entrepreneurs, authors, and self-starters looking to build community and gain valuable insights through expert interviews with women at the top of their game. Join your host, podcaster, producer, expert coach, entrepreneur, and author, Dr. Summer Watson, as she aims to inspire and empower you through these candid conversations. Lean in and embrace the journey. It's time to start the show. Here's your host, Dr. Summer Watson.
Welcome back to the Core Women Podcast. Today, I'm honored to sit down with Deb Krier, who is a seasoned entrepreneur, communications and PR expert, podcast host, and powerful cancer advocate. Deb's personal journey through stage 4 triple positive breast cancer and thyroid cancer led her to found tryingnottodie.LIVE and build a community and platform designed to empower those navigating cancer with strength, resiliency, and support. In this episode, we will be talking about turning pain into purpose, navigating health challenges while staying connected to passion, and how we can all be a source of hope no matter what we're facing. Let's jump right into this, Deb, and welcome.
Thank you. I am so honored to be a guest. I was listening to some of your other podcasts and it is phenomenal. You do a fabulous job.
Oh, thank you so much. You know what? I really owe it all to the guests.
Right.
Really, they're the ones who are bringing all the information, all the wisdom, all the guidance, great tips, great takeaways. So we're going to jump right into this because I'm sure you have all of that as well. But before we jump into the professional aspects of your journey, can you give me one word that kind of summarizes your journey up to this point?
So I was thinking about this because I was, what do I say? I'm going to say roller coaster. I think that's hyphenated or it's whatever. But yeah, my life has been in a good way, except there are times where the world dropped out from underneath you and you might have been chugging uphill kind of slow. But, it's just this continual adrenaline rush. And sometimes that's good and sometimes it's bad. But yeah, it's wild and crazy. And I just got to make sure I keep my arms in and hang on, right?
And enjoy the ride.
Yes. Please
As
enjoy
they
the
always
ride.
please enjoy the ride.
I
So
know.
tell us about this roller coaster ride, Deb, and how even through some very challenging times, you've enjoyed the ride or you've been able to pass on lessons to others.
Right. Well, I was born, and I won't go into lots of details, right? But I was born in the mountains of Colorado, little over 8,000 feet. My graduating class had 32, and it was just great fun as a kid growing up, but totally different expectations as to what the world was like, right? And so go away to college, had a great time, all of those things. Started a career, got married, didn't have kids, but we got dogs and cats, and so that kind of makes up for it. And I started my own company about 25 years ago. I suppose I should look that up. It's called Wise Women Communications. It was going great. I love what I do. And then I went for my annual checkup because we're good girls, right? And we go for our annual checkup. And I had my mammogram and I didn't even get home before they called and said, you need to come back. We need to redo it. Now, part of my history includes the fact that I worked for an oncologist and I worked for the American Cancer Society. And I knew, they know it hadn't malfunctioned. They needed to double check something.
Yeah.
And so I was diagnosed with microcalcifications. And I turned to Dr. Google, which folks don't do that. And I discovered that almost every woman gets these things of a certain age.
Yeah.
It's when the hormones change in our bodies and you just have these little specks. They're not visible to the human eye. They are so small. The computer was what saw it, which was why it was able to catch it so quickly. But mine had started to gather. They were social, and so they gathered. And that was where the problem came in. But I was initially diagnosed with stage 0, didn't even get an oncologist. Nobody seemed overly concerned, had a couple biopsies, which were really fun. And those came back negative. Then they said, let's just go ahead. And this is several months down the road. Let's just go ahead and pull some lymph nodes. And 8 of 12 lymph nodes came back positive with cancer. So I went from stage 0 to stage 3 poof. There were no in-betweens,
Right.
So, get my arms back in the car, right? And so then I did get an oncologist who I absolutely totally adore. And, she said, okay, we need to go hard at this. Now, one of the things that I tell people is you have to do what feels right for you in this journey, right? And I chose to do traditional. So I was going to do chemo, then I was going to do surgery, then I was going to do radiation. So I had a massive dose of chemo. It was 8 different drugs because these little things were floating around throughout my body, right?
Wow.
8 hours.
I want to interject here because you said 8 hours and people need to know why 8 hours.
Right.
And I know because I've been to multiple chemo sessions with a good friend who has stage
You've
4.
been a chemo buddy.
Yeah, I've been a chemo buddy. Tell us why 8 hours and why they do it that way.
And so it was my first one. And so one of the things they do is they do it more slowly because they want to see how your body will tolerate it. And some drugs they can combine and do kind of a cocktail. The ones that I had to all be done individually. So that was why it all spread out. And sat there, watched TV. I mean, it was boring.
Yeah.
As they put these nasty chemicals into my body, and went home. It was right around Halloween. So, trick-or-treaters came. I greeted them. I had nothing, right?
Yeah.
And then I started feeling kind of puny.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, you ding-a-ling, you just had these massive doses of chemo. And then I felt worse than puny and called into the doctor. The doctor said, hey, you should probably come in. And we didn't make it that far. I told my husband, I said, we need an ambulance. And we're 5 minutes from the hospital. So they came. The fire department came. This was really fun, right?
Right.
I'm like this all the time, just jibber jabber. And so I'm jibber jabbering with the fire department. They have this nifty thing that carts you down the stairs.
Yeah.
And I remember I'm in the ambulance. I'm jabbering with him. And I said, why have we stopped? And they said, well, it's a red light. So I knew exactly where we were. And I said, well, don't I get lights and sirens? and the next thing I know, it's hours later, the world crashed.
Wow.
So what happened was one of the drugs, we're not quite sure which one of those chemo drugs, caused a perforation of my colon. And so I kind of skipped sepsis. I mean, obviously it started as sepsis.
Yes.
But I went into septic shock. And 75% is about the stat of people do not survive septic shock. I was tachycardic. I was in shock. We had so many blankets piled on me that I couldn't move, and I was still just shaking like crazy. But I also remember the 2 doctors fighting over how long I was going to live that day. The surgeon did not want to bother because I was not going to make it. And the oncologist got in his face and said, you will do whatever you need to do. And obviously he did. But I also remember thinking, excuse me, I get a vote. And so I was in the hospital about 7 weeks, in and out of ICU, in and out of multiple surgeries. The septic shock has done far more damage to my body than the cancer. But yeah, it was just like, well, this was not on the agenda. And it was pretty bizarre. It was a complication that happens less than 1% of the time because, like you, I'm special.
We are special. And as a matter of fact, we are special in more than one ways. When I was 6 months old, I had a spontaneous perforation in my small intestine, and I went into septic shock and was raced to the hospital, was in a coma and there for months. They didn't know if I was going to live, die. And the last thing they did after multiple surgeries was surround the crib, hold hands. And my mom walked in and they were praying. And they said, this is the last thing we can give her.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So I understand because from that one incident, multiple surgeries. So when you say that particular issue has caused more damage, I absolutely understand that. I do.
Yeah. I lost about half of my digestive tract.
Yeah, it is tough, man.
And it has really done a number on my kidneys.
Wow, really?
I've never asked, but I have stage 3 kidney disease.
Wow.
And I'm assuming that at some point it's going to progress to something more. But, you just keep going, right?
Yeah.
I tell people I don't want to wake up and look up at dirt. So,
yeah, right. Okay. So you've had all this going on.
Mhm.
You've lived this incredibly special interesting and dynamic life. And you were diagnosed again with a second type of cancer.
Right. And there's actually been three.
Three.
In
Okay.
amongst all of this, I was in seeing my doctor and she said, "Is there anything else?" I said, "I got this thing on my arm that doesn't heal."
Oh, no.
And
Oh, no.
off I go to the dermatologist.
Yeah.
And the amazing thing was I had never been to a dermatologist. I am
What?
the freckly redheaded kid who never knew what sunscreen was, right?
Oh, no. Yeah.
I kept an eye on things
Yeah.
and, made sure that there was nothing, but it was basal cell carcinoma, which is actually, I mean, he didn't even take a stitch. He just went, and that was it.
Right.
But now I get to do the strip and spin every 6 months. He tells me, "Stop calling it that." I'm like, "Well, that's what it is."
You know what? You're having fun. You're having
Yeah,
fun with your life.
I
And
know.
you should, out of such a deeply personal journey came such an incredible initiative as well, which is tryingnottodie.LIVE.
Mhm.
I know what inspired you to create that. Tell us more about that and that space that you've created to help support others as well.
Right. So it was actually my business coach who pushed me into doing this. She kept saying, "You did not go through everything you went through without using it to help others." And it has been a journey. I mean, in December, I had my port removed finally. Yay!
Yay!
And that was surgical procedure, if I've kept track right, number 35.
Yeah.
So just all sorts of things. I was diagnosed 2 years ago with thyroid cancer. And I'm like, no, I don't want to be cancer girl, not a cape I want to put on. But she said, "You help people." I'm like, ugh. And she was right. I mean, doctors would call me in when they had students. They would call me in when they had a new patient, all sorts of things. So, we decided to start this initiative to help anyone who's on their cancer journey. And the trying not to die part came from when my mother was here. I'm an only child, and she got the phone call, "You need to get here, and you're not going to get here fast enough."
Mm,
I can't imagine that. Yikes. Right.
yeah.
But one of the times when a care team came and left, I got the disapproving mother face. I'm like, "What?" And she said, "You did not say thank you." And I said, "Oh, for God's sakes, Mom, I'm trying to not die." But it made me think later, when we have something serious going on, and sometimes just life, right?
Yeah.
We get so caught up in trying to not die that we forget that we have to live. Sometimes it's 5 hours, sometimes it's 5 days, sometimes it's 50, right?
Yeah.
But it is very much about how are we going to live our lives.
Yeah, right. Sometimes we are caught up in that subjective experience, our own lived experience, and that's when we can either start thriving or start depressing. And I've seen it go both ways. I also have seen it go really well because of the support system that we have around us, right?
Right.
And I also am an advocate for going to these different organizations and supporting their causes because not everybody has what we might have. And to me, to keep that in mind is living and helping others do the same thing, helping them thrive. And when I look at the thing that you're doing here, trying not to die, it's helping others to live their best life, to thrive through the difficulty and the challenges.
Mhm.
So, as you have developed this with your background in communications, marketing, and podcasting, how did those skills, those influencing skills, those marketing skills, the way you choose to tell your story and amplify voices of others facing cancer, how do you do that today?
We've got the website, tryingnottodie.live, and we do have a Facebook group. Now, we keep it private just because I don't want the people who are going to cure us with their protein drink, right?
Yeah,
But anybody can be part of that Facebook group, and we have a good time with it. We have somebody who posts regularly things that make us truly laugh out loud, right?
right.
All sorts of things. And there's a lot of people I work with one-on-one, and sometimes it's people who contact me and they'll say, "My mother, my sister, my coworker was just diagnosed and I don't know what to do." And
Yeah,
so what they do is nothing because they don't want to make us feel worse. They don't know what to say. I mean, all these things. And then, of course, we think they don't love us. And so I give them tips on, sometimes it's just to say, "Summer, I'm sorry. I'm really
yeah,
sorry you're going through this."
yeah,
Just acknowledge that elephant that's right there, right?
right.
But it is about how can we support each other? and build our community. I frequently have people tell me that when they're going through cancer and other serious illnesses too, they never felt so alone in their life. Now, part of that is our fault, right?
Right.
I don't want to be a bother. I don't want to whine. I don't want to tell you what's going on. My humor really is a big part of it. Am I happy all the time? No. Just ask my husband. He gets to deal with the cranky me.
Yeah.
But it is, how are we going to build that community and help each other on this journey?
Absolutely. And that is so important. I have other people in my life who have cancer as well. And some of those folks are really very much out there
Mhm.
with their diagnosis, their treatment, their story, their journey. And I have somebody who's very close to me who was like, I didn't even tell my wife until I already went to a clinic and then had to go to a cancer center. And she's like, what's happening? And he finally had to tell her, but then he didn't even tell his kids. And they found out on the app where it tracks where you are,
Oh
and they
no.
saw them at a cancer center and they were like, what are you doing there? And
Yes.
they had
What the
been there
heck?
all day. That's when they found out. It's interesting how people want to share their
Mhm.
information because they feel so vulnerable when they do. And I think part of that also harkens back to when we grew up and we were conditioned to be okay. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about those feelings.
And little boys, little
Yes,
girls, you have to be tough.
you have to be
You
tough.
have to be tough.
Or it's okay, or you don't have to show all that emotion. Just get up and brush it off. And so we become kind of detached from our emotions, how we're feeling. So when that person came up to you and said, how do I address this? Or what do I say to this person? It's because we do feel awkward because maybe we are disconnected with our own emotions to be able to say, I see you, I hear you, I'm here to listen. And sometimes it's, yes, I'm sorry.
Right.
But another thing that could be said is, I'm also here to listen. And that means sit there and listen and maybe be reflective and say, I hear you. I hear that you're sad. I hear that you're having a difficult time through this. And then at the end, how can I be of support? And sometimes that is a great way to begin too. So I love that guidance. You've turned your challenges into something powerful and supportive for the broader community. And what has this chapter of your life taught you most about resilience, human connection, understanding? I mean, there's so many things, there's so many adjectives that I can, place out
Right.
there, but what has it taught you to go through this journey and how you personally handled it? And then also how you're giving back to the community in regards to your story?
I think to remember we're not alone, and whatever it is, we can get through it. Now, sometimes that means that it's the end, right? But how are we going to get through there with whatever resources we have, all of those various things? To me, it's about how are we going to advocate for ourselves. I was dealing with my endocrinologist. He's the one who's responsible for the thyroid cancer and had a questionable result on a test. And he said, let's give it 6 months and try again. And my response to him was, no way, absolutely not. And his rationale was very good. It was actually wise and correct. But my oncologist said, this is bothering you, isn't it? I said, well, duh. And so she sent me to another doctor who said, there's nothing wrong, but did it in a way that was right. So, yeah, it's about how are we going to stand up for ourselves? One of the things I learned, don't put stuff off. Those bucket lists that we have, don't wait. Do things as soon as you can. Get rid of the toxic things in your life. I don't watch the news. I know what's going on. I don't need to watch the news, right?
Yes.
All of those various things. I was also raised, you don't show emotions, right? And you don't tell people. I tell people, hey, I love you. It has to be real, right? Not
Yes.
like, love you, bro, right?
Right. Deb, you're funny.
Yeah, and so tell people, or maybe it's that you appreciate them, or
Right.
whatever it is. Don't assume that they know.
Right. I appreciate what you said too about advocate for yourself. And I've seen it through my own journey. So many people are afraid to do it
Right.
and they don't
Those
know
white
how to
coats are
do it.
scary.
Yeah. But you know what? take your questions, ask the questions, take somebody with you. If you feel
Yes.
uncomfortable, take somebody with you who can ask those questions. I am not afraid to step in. I will ask the questions, and I will ask the questions for somebody else if they ask me to ask the questions. I don't want to be intrusive for somebody else, but if they're taking me along, they're taking me along for a reason. And here's the other information. If you need an advocate, they have signs in hospitals too, where it says, if you need an advocate, give a call to this number. Give a call.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. You know, they call them different things. In some
Right.
places, they're social workers. Sometimes they're patient advocates.
Right.
The funny thing, I actually have my own advocate at the insurance company who's very good. I've been very, very blessed with the fact that I had incredibly good insurance because I hit 2 million a very long time ago.
Oh, that's so easy to do with chemo treatments and surgeries and having what you said, over 35 surgeries thus far. It's easy. So easy to do. Yeah.
And I don't call the advocate at the insurance. I think I've called her twice.
Right.
And I called it not long ago. And you're thinking, but they work for the insurance company. And they do, but they're still there to help. And so I explained the situation. She apologized for what I was dealing with, and we got it fixed.
Great.
Now is the time to stand up for yourself. And if you can't, you have to have somebody else who can.
Absolutely. Well, we've covered a lot of ground here. What we didn't touch on is
a roller coaster.
I know. And we also had the Power Hour.
Mhm.
Is that correct? The Business
It's
Power
the Business
Hour.
Power Hour.
The Business
Yep.
Power
Mhm.
Hour. And it's a podcast.
It is.
So tell folks about that.
You know, it's a ton of fun, and it is the Business Power Hour. I have to say it that way. Otherwise, my trademark attorney gets annoyed at me. But yeah, thebusinesspowerhour.com. Over 1,000 episodes. I've been doing it a really long time.
Wow.
Clearly, we talk about business topics, but I try and make it fun. And I learn something from my guests every single time. And so businesspowerhour.com is the website.
Oh, thank you so much. As we come to the close of the interview, my last question for you, Deb, is for those listening who may be in the midst of their own health battle or supporting someone who is, what message of hope or practical guidance would you most want them to hear right now?
Be your own advocate, stand up for yourself, fire doctors or people, be friends when they're not serving your needs, but you will get through it to whatever the result is supposed to be.
Thank you, Deb, for joining me on the Core Women podcast today.
Thank you, Dr. Watson. This has been a delight.
Thank you so much. You can follow Deb Krier on LinkedIn, on Facebook at tryingnottodie-live, and at www.tryingnottodie.live. You can also follow her podcast, The Business Power Hour.
Thank you for joining us on the Core Women podcast with Dr. Summer Watson. We're so glad you're here and would love to connect more with you. Find us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at Core Women, and on Twitter at Core Women 1. For more about Core Women and Dr. Watson, visit corewomen.com. Want more support and resources for amazing women like you? Great! Join Dr. Watson and Jen Fontanilla at the Life, Love, and Money Collective, a Core Women production that aids in understanding the key traits that might be getting in the way of living a life that you are absolutely passionate about. Connect with Summer and Jen and find out more at thelifeloveandmoney.com.